Hi, my name's Jordan and I'm a trainee financial advisor and a personal finance writer. Today I want to talk to you about the impact of rising prices on your finances and things that you can do to try and reduce the impact of those price increases. So first of all, I want to talk about inflation because this is really what we're talking about when we talk about rising prices. So you may not really understand how this impacts on you. So let's go through a really simple example to kind of demonstrate what inflation is. Let's say this time last year, you go to the supermarket and you spend £100 on your food shop. If inflation is at 1%, that means that if you went to the supermarket today, you bought exactly the same stuff, the same amount, same brands, all that kind of thing, that same shop would cost you £101 today because inflation is at 1%. So you haven't done anything. You haven't spent any more in theory. You've bought exactly the same stuff as you bought last year. But because inflation is at 1%, the cost of that amount of shopping has gone up by £1 because 1% of 100 is £1. So that demonstrates basically what inflation is. And you may have heard of it in the news. It gets reported once a month. And it's effectively an average of a load of different products. Now, the thing with inflation is everybody has their own personal rate of inflation. So some things that you buy might have actually gone down in price versus last year. But generally, a lot of things go up in price from year to year. So when we think of saving money, we don't really think about doing nothing and the impact that a price rise might have on buying the same thing that we bought last year. So before we've even thought about saving money and reducing our spending, the things that we're currently buying are already going up in price. So it's something that we really need to be aware of when we're looking at our budgets and looking at how we can reduce our costs. So let's go through some of the ways that I think that you can be more aware of rising prices across the things that you buy and how you can reduce the impact of those price increases. So let's start with a food shop first of all, really common thing for everybody. The first thing that I would say is, no matter how savvy you are, always look at the things that you can be flexible with. Now in a food shop, there may be items that you simply have to buy, but there may be other things that you can be flexible with and you can try and reduce your costs. So I'm a really savvy shopper, but I'll give you an example. I used to always buy big bottles of branded fizzy pop. Just because I liked them basically. And they were like, maybe £1.50 a bottle. And then a few months ago, I switched to a non-branded version for 40p. Massive reduction. Now it doesn't seem like a lot, but if I bought a couple of bottles a week over the course of a month, that saves me a few quid. Over the course of a year, it saves me about 50, 60 quid. Now I could have done nothing. I could have not compromised on that branded fizzy pop, but I gave it a go. I switched. Wasn't really a big thing for me. That's brought down the cost of that particular product. So if there are price increases and other things that I've bought, I've sort of balanced them. Another thing that I like to do is bulk buy things when they are on offer. Now, promotional things like half price, 2-for-1s, all that sort of stuff. Supermarkets get us into the shops with those offers. But the problem is a lot of those offers are on things like sweets and snacks and treats and stuff like that. Don't go spending your money on those things unless you really need to, because all that will happen is you might think you're getting a bargain, but come on, you'll just eat that food twice as quick. But with things like non-perishable things, so your store cupboard food, your basics like bags of pasta or chopped tomatoes or even cleaning products and stuff like that, it's always really good when you can bulk buy on those things when they're on offer, fill up your store cupboard and you've got stuff good to go for a few months. And that is a really good way of reducing, it's the same thing, the impact of price rises on products. Take advantage of offers, promotional offers, where you're not likely to just use up those items twice as quick. The next thing, subscriptions. Right, this is a really interesting one. So you've probably all got some form of a subscription, and they are notorious for putting their prices up. Disney Plus, for example, has just gone up by £2. So let's say that you've got, TV subscriptions. The really good thing about those is you're generally not in a contract. So you have the power to stop paying for things when you like, effectively. But the issue with subscriptions is because we just pay for them once a month and they just go out of our bank account and we're used to having them, we're not that comfortable letting go of them. It's a really random psychological trick. But what I've discovered is that you can try and switch your subscriptions and see how you feel by not having one for one month. So let's say you've got Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus. That's going to probably cost you around £25 a month. And there will be price increases because they always put their prices up. Try turning one off for a month. Let's say, for example, you've gone through Netflix. And there isn't really much on at the moment, but you know that maybe there's like a new series of something coming in a month's time or whatever. But for the month ahead, you're like, there's not really much I fancy, but maybe you've got Amazon or Disney Plus to use as well. Try turning one off. You'll instantly save a third just by not having an extra subscription for a month. And see how you feel. If you hate it, fine, turn it back on. But just give it a go and see where you can avoid certain subscriptions for a month, don't pay for them, and see how you feel. You might feel absolutely fine. What I've been doing is alternating subscriptions. So 1 month I'll have this, 1 month next. And I've effectively saved a fair chunk of money on subscriptions just by giving it a go. You've got to try things and just see how you feel about them. A lot of the time we just spend money out of habit because we are set in our routines. Next thing, look at bills when they're out of contract. Actually, before that, the first thing that you should be doing, whenever you get a new contract, put in your diary when that contract ends. Now, companies do have more responsibilities than before to let customers know when contracts will end, but don't rely on them doing it for you. Make a note of when a contract ends, even if it's 18 months, 24 months down the line, because once you come out of the contract, you will probably then be put on a higher rate. And you don't even really want to let your contract end and then start shopping around, because you might have an extra month at a higher rate. So always try and be efficient. I know it sounds like it's too far ahead, but once you set up a contract, immediately note down when it ends so that you've got that end date and you can shop around before the end date to move on to a better deal. The next thing I want to talk about is your budget in general, basically. So obviously there are certain things that you have to pay for. Certain things are fixed. You can't really reduce the impact of price rises on them. So council tax is a massive one for everyone. It goes up every year. It generally goes up above inflation. So it is a big cost for people. But there's no point trying to spend time and energy finding ways of reducing your council tax bill. And I see loads of content on this, which is fine if you are on a low income or you're claiming benefits and you might have additional support. But for the majority of us, a council tax bill is a legal bill that we have to pay. And unless you want to have other people living with you to split the bills or something like that, basically if you're a family household, you are going to have to pay that bill. You can't reduce the impact. Other things may be commuting costs. If you've got to get a train to work, train tickets are what they are and they go up in price and it frustrates everyone. But if you're buying a peak train ticket, there aren't really many savings to be had. So certain things in your budget, look at them and rule out the things that you can't change. Don't spend time and energy on those things. Then look at things that you're spending a lot of your money on. Now, for people, this could be eating out, it could be takeaways, it could be clothing. So things like that, you then might want to say to yourself, well, how can I just reduce spending on those in general? Because that in itself will help reduce the impact of rising prices if I simply don't spend as much. So my tip for clothing, I love doing this, is to buy out of season, because you can always get things in the sale. And if you are not a particular, if you're not particularly kind of like a fashion nut, it doesn't really matter if, you're buying last season's. I mean, the trends don't really change that much. So, buy stuff for summer in the autumn, buy stuff for winter in the spring. Bulky thing, winter clothing in spring sales is really, really cheap. You can get really good jackets and stuff for, over 50% off. So if you are buying clothes, I would suggest trying to buy them out of season, because again, clothing prices do tend to increase. So if you can just buy them at a discount in a sale, job done. You've reduced the impact of price rises on clothing because you've bought them at a time when nobody else wants to buy them. There's less demand, therefore prices are cheaper. Food, takeaways, eating out, all that kind of stuff. Again, there's lots of if you're doing takeaways, why don't you just, make a fakeaway? But again, the reason people buy takeaways is because we are lazy and it's nice to treat ourselves every now and then. But if you're spending a lot on takeaways, maybe, instead of buying a pizza takeaway, go and get a couple of pizzas at the supermarket and cook them in the oven. Again, it's not going to be like, you're cooking from scratch, but it'll be a balance between cooking from scratch and just getting a takeaway. So again, there'll be some some savings that you can make in kind of the costs of those kind of things there as well. And the other thing is cashback. Always try and use cashback. I've tried this thing called cashback stacking, which is where I try and take advantage of more than one cashback offer on a purchase, because you've got your main cashback websites, Quidco and Top Cashback. So if you are buying something, always check that there might be some cashback on that. But in addition to that, you've got something called Airtime Rewards, which is a mobile phone app, which is really easy to use. You might also happen to have a credit card that pays you cashback as well. So there are extra ways that you might be able to sort of almost double your cashback on one purchase just by doing a little bit of research. So those are my top tips for reducing the impact of price rises on your finances. But really, it's just about being aware that if you do nothing, things will go up in price. So if you don't have a pay rise one year and you're buying the same things as you did last year, it's very likely that they will cost more than they did. And therefore the value of your money is less because things are costing you more, but you have the same amount of money as you did last year. So that money isn't going to stretch as far. So when you're looking at your budget, you're looking at what you're spending. As I've said, look at the things where you can try and be flexible and just give some of my tips a try, because it will help you reduce your overall spending, and that in itself will help reduce the impact of price rises on your finances so that you can make your money go further. I hope you find these tips useful.